Thank you for tuning in to the Catch a Lift Fund's Coach's Corner podcast. We hope you enjoy today's episode and will consider supporting the Catch a Lift Fund and the veterans we serve. Visit our website for more information about our programs at catchaliftfund.org. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis or suicidal thoughts, please call 988 or the Veterans Crisis Line 988, followed immediately by the number 1. The views and opinions expressed during the Coach's Corner podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the Catch a Lift Fund. The Catch a Lift Fund does not verify or warrant the truth or accuracy of statements made during the podcast, and statements therein are not to be construed as an official policy or position of the Catch a Lift Fund. This podcast is provided for informational purposes only, and nothing herein should be construed as health, medical, or other professional advice. The Coach's Corner is a place for veterans to connect, heal, and share their stories. I'm Melissa Luke, the host of the Coach's Corner podcast. I am a U.S. Army Iraq War veteran, coach, and program director for the Catch a Lift Fund. The Coach's Corner is sponsored by ID Technologies. Welcome to this week's episode of the Coach's Corner. Before introducing today's guests, I do want to note that today's episode will include conversations about military sexual trauma and physical trauma. Please advise when listening. Today, I'm excited to introduce our guest, Lorenzo Young. Lorenzo is a Catch a Lift Fund veteran athlete and U.S. Army veteran. Welcome to this week's episode of the Coach's Corner. Lorenzo, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're honored to have you today, Lorenzo. Let's get right into it. Lorenzo, if you wouldn't mind, talk to us a little bit about your life growing up and what would ultimately lead you to joining the Army.
Sure. So I grew up in a little bit of a chaotic home filled with lots of love. There was lots of love, but my parents did separate when I was very young. So my father later remarried and my mother remarried. So going in between, two homes, it was really great during Christmas time,
I bet, yeah.
Who's going to argue with two Christmases, Nobody, especially not a child.
For real, yeah.
So, there that was. I was surrounded by lots of love. It wasn't easy, but between the four of them, and, I lost my father when I was really young, age 13. It later turned into three of them. I was raised up pretty well, I think, lots of love. Lots of love.
What would take you to the Army, Lorenzo?
Just being in between, living with my real mother and my stepmother, and not really having any sense of direction or purpose. I didn't want to stay there because of these reasons. I didn't want to stay here because of those reasons. And
right,
being in college was not where I wanted to be at the time. So I ran away by joining the military, and it was a decision that I didn't realize how big it was until, a little later.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm sure. Talk to us, Lorenzo, about being a young soldier going through basic training in AIT.
So being a young soldier, you experience a lot of emotions because you're out of a familiar element. And for myself, it was getting down to the discipline and, the routine and experiencing all that stuff. The physical fitness part was, it was cake for me. But being around people from all over the world, it was rough. I wasn't very open to it when I first got there, actually. But later on, and as time goes on, and if you spend enough time with the same group of people, you get really close and you care about them and you learn to love strangers.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing because you are all strangers, but you end up becoming like this tight-knit family.
Yep.
Yeah. Lorenzo, what MOS would you enlist with?
I enlisted as an 88 Mike.
You came in as an 88 Mike. And we'll touch on this later, but you would end up cross training as an aviation door gunner. We'll loop back around there. What would happen for you kind of immediately after you got done with basic and AIT? Where would your military career take you?
So I ended up, of all places, being from California, I ended up on the opposite side of the U.S. in upstate New York.
Really?
Fort Drum, New York. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. What do you remember about being at Fort Drum?
It snows about 8 months out of the year. And summer is about somewhere in the 70s. If you're really lucky, it might be like 80. It's very country. There's not a lot to do there. Unless you like going to bars, like hole-in-the-wall bars. They're everywhere there.
Yeah.
I did learn how to ski and snowboard while I was there. So that was probably some of the finer points that I had. One of my buddies was an avid snowboarder and sold me one of his old Burton boards at a decent price. And I had taught myself how to snowboard. So
very cool. It's always interesting, some of the different duty stations people end up at, and especially like, if it was far away from home or just completely kind of a different, very different feel to how they grow up like that, and like the unique stuff, like, yeah, even if it was kind of like a boring country place, like the positives you can still, pull out of it like that, like learning to ski and snowboard and just, kind of taking up winter sports or, whatever's unique to that area. So Lorenzo, an incredibly unfortunate thing that many members of our military face, both females and males. We tend to hear about it more on the female side, and a lot more attention is given it to there. But what I would call really the crisis in the military of military sexual trauma. Lorenzo, would you talk to us about your experience with military sexual trauma?
So this was my birthday night, and it was in the barracks, drinking. And it was one of those nights that was a night of playing beer pong and ended up in myself being assaulted.
Lorenzo, what would happen after that night?
I did not plan on telling anyone about it. I only wanted to escape the barracks, and so I called one of the people from my unit, a good friend of mine, and I asked her just to get me out of the barracks. Yeah. And she did. She contacted our commander, and against my wishes, she actually, reported it. And so it was a whole big thing. Obviously, I was embarrassed and ashamed and, going through whatever I was going through. But it seemed like the right thing to do, that she decided to, thank you. I thank her now for actually taking that initiative. But anyways, he was, my abuser was later convicted.
Lorenzo, if I can ask, and if you don't mind speaking on it, so as this gets, passed up, it got passed up, to your commander and, really went from there. Is this something that as this was going on, did people in your unit know about it?
So everyone knows, everybody knows everyone, and everybody knows everything about everyone in the military world. Word travels extremely fast. And so, yes, everyone did find out. I don't even know how, because only the, commanders and like my upper chain of command knew about it, apart from a couple of people who were involved in that night, my peers. And so everyone knew, absolutely everyone knew. And it's the worst feeling. It makes your skin crawl. It makes people look down on you. I've heard people say that he's probably lying. I've heard people say that he probably liked it. He probably enjoyed it. He probably deserved it. Everything under the sun. And it really does something different to you in terms of what you believe in and people around you and your trust very quickly wanes away into nothing.
Lorenzo, talk to us a bit about the process of the prosecution of your attacker.
Okay, so there is a team of people on every military installation, which is called CID. They're the undercover folk, and their job is to be on I don't know how you would actually describe them. Anyway, they have about the same weight as, military police, if not more. Okay, so they interviewed my abuser and got his confession and his failed lie detector test. And because they did that without reading him his rights, that information was inadmissible in the courtroom.
Oh, shoot.
So instead of having a quick conviction, it took 9 months to actually tear the case apart, to go back and forth, with lawyers and all that stuff. And it was brutal, so going from having the night happen to tearing apart the details and ripping, they ripped the details out of me because I didn't want to talk about it anymore at that point. If I had it my way, I probably would never have mentioned it, but you can't pick and choose, You can't, it was out there, it happened, and I was asked several times, do I want to move forward? Do I want to not move forward? And I'm like, yeah, move forward, no, I don't want to. No, I don't want to do this. No, I don't want to be sitting here in this room with you. But they don't have, had I decided not to, I don't really know what would have happened because military law is different than civilian law.
Right. Yeah.
You have the state that will, take up a case on your behalf if you decide not to move forward. At the time, there was not even a such thing as male on male sexual trauma in military law. So the MST was newly developed after I had already gotten out of the military, So they underline it with other factors. Yeah. Other ways of putting it. I don't know.
So that's an incredibly long period of time, right? So 9 months, not only have you gone through this absolutely horrific trauma, but now you were laid bare for 9 months, like you said, like everything, ripped out of you, details. You're having to, I would imagine, relive this over and over and over again. Lorenzo, talk to us about, and we'll get to this in a minute, or you can even touch on it now, but during this time, you're also getting ready to deploy to Iraq. How were you coping? How were you handling yourself? How was this affecting your ability to train up as a soldier to be entering a war zone?
There was no, I after the conviction, it was 2 weeks later that I actually deployed. So it was fairly fast. If you would like to say that I, seen counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists, doctors in between during the trial time, there was that did take place. Was that enough to prepare me? No, but we did train, we trained to deploy. I was exceptional at my work as a door gunner because I never actually got to work as a 88 mic. But as a door gunner, I excelled at my job. And when I deployed, that's what I did.
Lorenzo, we're going to get into that deployment in just a minute, but I do want to ask if you could touch on, after the conviction came to your abuser, was there any type of closure to you? Did you feel any closure there, or was it still just open for you?
It's completely open, wide open. It was just, it's so, even today, and I think it's 14 years later or something, it's still like it was yesterday. If I sit in long enough, it was like yesterday. There's no closure. The amount of problems that I've dealt with directly because of this happening to me, it would blow your mind.
Lorenzo, talk to us about deploying to Iraq as a door gunner.
So this is my happy time. These are the moments that, being being in Iraq in that fast-paced environment, working with the most beautiful people I have ever met in my entire life, the guys, the women, the locals, because there's people from, you know, all militaries over there, Australia, Africa, Turkey, like everywhere. So it was one of the best times of my life. It was like, oh man, I don't know how to, I don't know. Yes, there was war. Yes, I got shot at on a daily basis. Every time we left a landing zone when we were flying, we got shot at. It is what it is, but I mean, why? I mean, I can refer to this as a time of accomplishment and purpose, and we were doing something. And so it was the best. That fast pace, if I could have stayed in that fast pace, I say this now, I probably didn't feel that like, this way then.
I get that.
But if I could have stayed in that fast pace and just work me until I die, God.
Yeah.
You know, like if I could have, like, I mean, it was something you don't have words to describe, especially the bonds you develop with people.
Yeah.
My brothers and sisters, you know, in arms, it's just priceless.
Lorenzo, would you talk to us about some of the unique challenges of being a door gunner in Iraq?
This is a very challenging job for a door gunner on a CH-47 helicopter, because not only are you in charge of scanning your 180 degrees on your left side of your aircraft, but you're in charge of being familiar with like a maintenance panel, which is essentially the mechanic's job. But having that general knowledge and being familiar with the left gun sits right in front of your avionics closet, which also has all of your navigation systems, your intercoms, all that stuff. So you have to be familiar with that stuff. There was several times when we were out there and our navigation system dumps, and I have to, with a little finger light, you know, go in there and like make adjustments. And there are these things called simple key loaders, where you get to like have to follow all these little steps to like, you know, load and dump, and like now you're in flight, you know, 3,000 feet in the air, and it's like, okay, let me do this real quick. It's a lot of stress, but you know what? That stress, oh man, I would take it back over any other stress ever, you know?
That's incredible. I want to touch back kind of on that particular type of stress in a minute here to follow up with the next question, but talk to us a little bit, Lorenzo, about what did the missions look like, or, you know, how many hours would you be out and about? What time of day? Like, what did that kind of look like?
So it would depend on our mission for, you know, the day. And I think our missions were planned about a week in advance, but a lot of times it was the day of or day before, because things change so quickly out there.
For sure. Yep.
And especially if you don't get a lot of time in between creating a plan, because everything is done in a way where, you know, like, I mean, especially when you use computers, you don't know if the enemy's watching your plans or whatever, you know. So our days looked like probably 8 to 10 hours a day, or no, I'm sorry, 10 to 12 hours a day. We would fly at a max between probably like 4 to 6 hours. And then like some of our longer missions were like 8 to 10 hours. And that was just really pushing it. We would be required to take so many days off after a mission like that, because you're required to get X amount of sleep before starting your next mission. Yeah, we got a day off maybe every 10th day to rest and like maybe go buy like essentials from a bazaar or from like whatever it was. But yeah.
So, you know, in taking all of that into account, you know, and referencing back, you know, to the unique stresses of the job, right? Good or bad, but those unique stresses, you know, it's a very kinetic environment. You know, you're literally a gunner in the air, working long hours, you know, a lot going on, a lot you're responsible for, a very young age. Lorenzo, how do you stay sharp in that situation?
My only answer to that would probably be, because I look back and don't know how I got through it sometimes, you know, and I don't know how I was so exceptional, but your fight or flight kicks in when you're in an unfamiliar area. You know, you can sit in and wallow in the fact that you're 8,000 miles away from your family and you can't help them if they needed you. And that's probably one of the worst things to deal with, especially when you have a dysfunctional family that will like everyone's like broken for one reason or another. You can't help them. You can't drive down the street and, go to mom's house or go to your brother's house. Your fight or flight has to kick in, and essentially that fight or flight will save lives and will save your own life. So.
Thank you for speaking on that, Lorenzo. So a good amount of your time, you were extremely busy, with very little downtime, but at the same time, there was times where you had downtime and kind of even that force, like, all right, you guys are off mission, you got to rest now. Talk to us a little bit about mentally coping when stuff in Iraq would slow down and you're forced to just kind of be there with your thoughts and emotions. What was that like for you?
Those were hands down the worst times for me being out there. Having downtime was times when, you can watch a movie on a laptop, or if you can get service onto a social media platform. At the time, I think it was Facebook or MySpace or whatever. But if you can only occupy your mind with that stuff for so long before you start going into dark places. And for me, I had a lot of inner conflict that I was going through. Coping, talking to the chaplain was always very helpful for me, because we had a really decent chaplain, and his assistant, actually, who's an actual chaplain nowadays, really cool, was very helpful as well. Just having those open doors. And,
right.
But there was many times where on my downtime I would just step out of my living quarters and just go look up at the moon and the stars and just kind of cry and allow myself to okay, God, what am I doing? Where am I going? You don't know. And your day-to-day it changes all the time, and it's rough, but those are the most difficult times for sure. Downtime.
Looking back on that tour in Iraq, Lorenzo, what are you most proud of when you look back on it?
That I did the very best that I could, and that I excelled at my job. And everyone out there in my unit will tell you the exact same thing.
Lorenzo, thank you so much for your service to our great country. Would you talk to us a bit about what it was like coming back to the U.S. after being in Iraq?
That's a bittersweet time in a soldier's life, because you come home and then you're like, yes, I wanted, all I wanted to do was leave that place.
Yeah, we've been counting down the days, home. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Right down to the last hour.
Yep.
And you get there and you're like, oh man, what do I do with myself?
Yeah.
What do I do with all this time I have to sit here and think in my mind? It's the pace goes from high intense pace to, wow, this shit is like so slow. Yeah. So slow. So you have a change of pace, you have a change of mindset, you got to adjust in that area. You're no longer, getting your fight or flight system is a big one. It's like you're no longer in combat, and you have to, I feel like it might take different lengths of time for everyone, in order for myself, I was more focused on my inner conflict with, the MST. And that was my dark times coming back. And for a long time, that was my time in service, is dealing with that. So it's a difficult adjustment for anyone.
Lorenzo, you've spent a lot of years utilizing, VA services, various doctors, and so on and so forth, to help you in your recovery process from the trauma. Can you elaborate for us on how time and the therapy at the VA really have aided you in this recovery journey?
The VA system is a great system. It's not perfect, but from day one, the military had always, when I was active as well, the military had always did their best to help me. And I will not take that from them, and as a veteran, from those doctors either. In the beginning, I was not ready. I thought I was ready, and it was kind of what is it, like a formality to, go to the counseling sessions and
Exactly. Right.
to get on medications,
Yep.
so I could sleep or whatnot. But I essentially took care of myself by going through, the formalities and drinking alcohol. And one of my biggest problems was sleeping, so I was drinking alcohol and taking Ambiens in order to go to sleep and to treat myself. And a little later, it turned into taking Ambiens and enjoying the high while under
Yeah.
the influence of alcohol, and
Right.
then going to sleep. And then, so it's just, I was not ready in the beginning, but the last, I would say, 7 or 8 years, I've been aggressively working with all of these doctors, and I am the product of very great, hardworking, loving people. And that's where I am today. I am only able to do this podcast and have this conversation with you because I have put in the work, and I've
Right.
come a very long way from being homeless to being on drugs to just doing everything under the sun that I was not supposed to be doing in my
Right.
pain. And I am for 100% testament that with God's work, it's all possible. And I have been going to church the last 4 years, not this past year, because I started feeling a lot of pressure with the church and just feeling like my social settings with people within the church were not flourishing. And so I decided to take a step back and to figure out, like, okay, is this because of me? Is this something that's out of my hands? Where am I at?
Right. Right.
So I've come a long ways, but the problems they're always going to be there. And the key is to know how to deal with them. And I know how to deal with them today more than I have ever known how to deal with my problems. So
I think it's really interesting, Lorenzo, right? How time truly does play a part in this whole thing, right? Now, while I can certainly attest to the fact that, there's no therapy you can do, there's no pill you can take, there's nothing you can do to physically change what has happened. Even time, it doesn't matter if it's been 1 year, 10 years, 20 plus years. What happened still happened. However, I know from my own individual experience, I was sexually assaulted in the military in 2005, and as soon as I returned home, or it was about a 3-month time frame or so after I got home from Iraq, when I started, pursuing treatment and stuff. But I was a complete mess. I was not ready to do the treatment that the VA put in front of me. And I would certainly, like you, attest to the fact that, by the grace of God and, by these, various doctors and folks that I worked with at the VA, I've gotten, I've been able to work through a lot of this. But at the same time, early on, I was not ready for that type of intervention that they were giving me. And it, for a period of years went very south. But, a turning point for me was, after my daughter and, the last 5-6 years in particular, I've been able to go at my individual recovery very hard. And so I certainly understand how time does play a factor in it, and also the people at the VA or the services, that you're pursuing. Would you speak a little bit, Lorenzo, because, something I hear a lot, I know you've heard a lot because it's just said a lot in our community. Veterans will either kind of love or hate the VA, right? And ones that don't like it, they've had an experience and it's kind of like, F those people. What do you say to folks that, are, veterans that are either apprehensive to get VA care, or maybe they've had a bad experience?
I think it's very easily for people to jump on trending, to jump on a trend. And I feel like veterans, it's very easy to say, oh, I hate the VA and they suck. And then every veteran is doing that. I think it's so important that you don't get stuck, don't get fixated on the fact that you had a experience at the VA that is probably not even a bad experience. It was an experience that didn't go your way, and you need to stop being mad about that fact. So take a step back and try again, because I can tell you, if someone's had one bad experience at the VA, I feel bad saying this because they're going to sit here and say every experience that I've had at the VA has been bad, when that's definitely not going to be the truth. I've had experiences when things didn't go my way at the VA, and, I didn't, get what I wanted, especially when I was homeless and I would go ask for help. Well, they wanted to help me, but if I wasn't willing to get rid of the drugs, and they can't help me. And so if that's, or the alcohol, then that's, it is what it is. You got to be willing to stop doing what you're doing, because what you're doing no longer works. And I think that's why you're asking for help. And then allow these people to help you. What you're doing does not work. You're asking for help. At the same time, you're asking for help, and you don't get to set the terms of that help if you want help.
Yeah.
So, nobody wants to hear that, but it's the truth. If you can't let go and let God, because I believe God is going to use these people to work through these people at the VA who are just trying to do a job, and they actually care. And if you open your eyes a little, you'll see that they care. You'll see that. Your hardships, my hardships, have blinded me many a times from being able to see the people that do care. And I'm not justifying, but I'm just trying to say that I am a hurt person. I was a very hurt person, and I have experienced darkness that I don't have words for. I don't. It's just pain. Pain will eat at you. It'll like manifest into this. It'll fester. It'll it'll consume you.
It will. Yes.
Not everybody has the right answer, but I think the VA tries.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. And the only thing I would add to that, and just in my experience, right? Because I can resonate with everything you're saying. And, I've done so many different treatment models at the VA, everything that's been, evidence-based, and, been inpatient in with them for, many weeks, working on trauma, outpatient, groups, just everything individual. But like I said, a lot of it was timing for me. Right. And if I was trying to force something that wasn't ready, it didn't go good. But the other thing was, it was finding the right doctors for me, right? The right psychiatrist, the right psychologist, and something that, I learned very early on was that, and my husband, he helped me a lot with this and advocating for me. But, if there's a provider that you don't gel with, they've assigned you this provider and y'all aren't gelling, you have the right to switch providers, and find a provider that is right for you. And that certainly helped me a lot. So I would definitely recommend to any veterans listening to, if you're not, jiving, with your therapist, your psychiatrist, your doctor, whatever it may be, look at making a switch. That is something I've had to do many times, but you do also have to be, like you're saying, you have to be open to that help.
Exactly. Yep.
Lorenzo, talk about, some of the ways that you've seen, therapy or different treatments at the VA really open your life back up for you.
So I had a really awesome psychologist back in 2016 from 2015 to probably about 2016 late. And one of his, apart from our sessions, and I would always, without going into detail, I would kind of fight with him. He would always want to be like, this detail right here. And I'm like, leave me alone. It's like, it's a nightmare, but it's work and it's effective. Those people don't go to, those psychologists do not go to school for 15, 20 years or whatever the case, so they can sit there and just like have a conversation with you. They're there to help you, and they have the experience and knowledge behind them. And mine was, and I was so sad. I stopped seeing a psychologist for the longest time after he left, because I was like, I do not want to build another relationship all over again.
Yep, I get that. Yep.
So later, I would end up with a regular psychologist, not at the VA. So I won't be changing psychologists again. But he advised, hey, go to the gym. You're working out, right? Because I was just doing push-ups, sit-ups. I think I even had my mother doing push-ups and sit-ups with me.
That's awesome.
When I was trying. Yeah. And my mother is a girl. She is a girly girl. She likes her cigarettes. She likes her jewelry and stuff. My mom don't work out. But she I got her doing sit-ups and push-ups with me. Like, yes, I
That's
did.
awesome. Oh my
And
gosh.
so, and she knew why I was doing it too, you
Yeah.
know. So that was a really good time. And he advised me to go get a membership, and I did. I got a $40 membership, and I have been consistent ever since. And that was in 2016. So
That's tremendous. That's
yeah.
tremendous. Lorenzo, would you speak for a moment to any veterans listening, who have gone through military sexual trauma themselves, and either there's still a lot of shame or whatever it may be, and they haven't been able to kind of move forward or really get into recovery yet. What would you say to those veterans?
I would say that it gets better. I would say go to the VA and ask for help. And you're not gonna, if you're waiting for a moment, which is a moment that I also never found, a moment to be and feel ready, you're not gonna get it. It's not gonna come. The biggest healer for me, in addition to all of the help, was time. And so here I am. What is it, 14 years later or so? It's still something that I deal with on my own, on my own terms. And my day-to-day stressors are always challenging because I have these, intrusive thoughts in the side of my mind, and, these hard memories. And it's you got to put in the work. And so that's why I put in the work. But go to the VA, guys, like, ask for help. And if you have to show up there every single day until you find something that works for you, go and do it.
Yeah.
There's money there for you. There's money. Those people are paid. Those jobs are designed for you. And if you put your mind into a mindset of accepting what these people are trying to give you, it will be a lot easier. Just know that you're not alone as well. You're definitely not alone. Someone is going through everything that you're going through, whether it's, suicidal, homicidal, intrusive thoughts. People go through these things all day long.
Yeah.
And it's the ones that don't speak up and ask for help that end up ending it all in a way that hurts all of us. So go ask for help, guys, and it does get better. I'm a testament. If you got to turn to God, turn to God. If you got to sit there in your room or if you're on the streets, wherever you're at, if you got to sit there and say, God, please, I can't do this anymore on my own.
Right.
He will hear you. He will hear you, and
Yes.
he will definitely start working in your life, whether you know it or not.
This is true. Yes. Thank you for speaking to that, Lorenzo. Thank you so much for coming on today and being vulnerable with us, sharing your story and talking about this. It's such an important topic. And like I said, unfortunately, men who've been victims of MST, it's not heard about a lot. So we really appreciate you talking about that. Lorenzo, I want to shift gears a little bit here and talk about Catch a Lift and your physical fitness. And you've got a lot of great stuff going on in your life now. Lorenzo, how did you come to Cal? How did you find us?
I found you guys by going to a vet center.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Vet centers are everywhere, guys. So go to your local vet center.
Yes, go to the vet center. We're extremely big fans of them. All of us here at Catch a Lift. They do tremendous work, and they're absolutely fantastic pushing out our mission. That's incredible. That's how you found us. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Lorenzo, talk to us about how your experience has been in Catch a Lift. Talk about the wellness program. You went through that this spring. Talk to us about how Cal has been.
I had an array of different programs to choose from, and I decided to go with bands because I figured I'll be able to fit this into my schedule real easy, get my grant, and then run like hell, whatever the case is.
Yep.
But so I just underestimated bands. Like, don't underestimate bands, guys. Definitely.
For real. Don't sleep on them. Don't sleep on them. Yep.
Don't sleep on bands because they're so effective. I use them for cardiorespiratory, high endurance, more reps as opposed to, dynamic stuff. But they're so beneficial. They're so beneficial once you get that cardiorespiratory system and you get that glycolysis going. Like, it's all hands down right there.
Yeah.
It's so Coach Adam, who also works for Catch a Lift, in case anyone doesn't know, And he was so awesome about updating me with like workouts that actually interested me. And the way he changes it up, it kept my interest from week 1 all the way to week 8.
Yeah.
So I was super, super happy. Like it was so easy to get through that workout because I think he designed them specifically to keep my interest. You know, there was they weren't completely, there was like 10 workouts with the bands that were always the same because that was kind of like my warm up and, you know, getting that habit into working with the bands. But the way he adjusts the tail end of the workout is like always making like there was times when I was like YouTubing Tabata workouts or Tabata sit-ups. I was like, what the heck is that? Is he crazy? I'm not no gymnast. Thinking that there was something out of this world, come to find out. And so it was just it was a great experience from beginning to end for me because, you know, that time spent on researching the workouts and that time that I got better at, you know, doing handstand holds or five minute jumping jacks or whatever the case was. The way it was arranged, the challenge was it was enough to challenge myself, but it was not so overdone, so overwhelming that I wasn't able to, you know, meet the end of the workout, and I got it, and by the end of it, it was great. It was fantastic. I have no complaints. I loved updating you guys with the you know, at the end you have after each week you do a little update of how your week went, what worked, and being able to say, okay, so I was able to do about half of my, you know, this here, and then I needed a 30-second break. You know, doing all that stuff, it's like having an actual coach, and that costs money, you know, in the civilian world.
Yep.
And so I was ecstatic. I was ecstatic. It was like my heart was bouncing up and down every day because I was just in this element, you know. On top, in addition to the work that I was putting in, I had these people who I'd never met, you know, keeping me going and keeping me accountable and just, you know, having a positive impact on my life. And you guys all did that. And what more could you ask for as a veteran? You can't ask for more than that. Like it was great.
It was so much fun. Definitely kind of watching you go through the program and watching you progress. Lorenzo, talk to us a little bit, and you touched on it there, but if you talk to us a little bit more about what it's meant to you to be a part of a community within Catch a Lift with so many like-minded veterans who are, you know, driven to better themselves by physical fitness.
It's meant everything to me. It brought back that camaraderie feeling, and it's opened doors. There was a program I went through, you know, information I received from Coach Adam about a program called FitOps, which is now called the University of Health and Professionals Performance, sorry. And so UHP, I got to go through that program, and I got to meet other vets, both active duty and non-active duty, and of all U.S. Armed Forces. And some of them were like youngsters, like in the early 20s, like when I first joined.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was just the most, man, it was a very profound and beautiful experience. And I am so grateful that Coach Adam thought of me when he passed that information along, because that experience alone changed my life, because I had forgotten, after all this time, I had forgotten what it was like to be in a room full of like-minded people serving for a higher purpose and doing something way bigger than ourselves. And so that was great.
That's so cool. So you're a certified personal trainer now, Lorenzo. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Talk to us a bit about what you're pursuing next educationally within fitness.
So thanks to Catch a Lift. I am pursuing indoor cycling, group training. Staying busy with that. I have not received the book yet in the mail, but I was in between. There's a group there's a certificate just for group training, and then there was a cycling one, and the book the book that they use is a NITA book. That they refer to is that you do the group training, and it's like that. But I was like, So I decided to just go into the cycling group training thing because it was something that interests me. And I actually did not start on the bikes until maybe about 6 months ago ish.
It's incredible.
I made a friend who he's always on the bike, and then I was like, I'm gonna do cycling. You know what I mean?
Love it.
So it was really cool. Yeah, that's what I'm working on now. Anyways,
that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. That's so cool. Lorenzo, what does it mean to you today, to be a personal trainer, to have the opportunity to continue on your fitness knowledge? What has that meant to you?
It's meant everything. I did not realize that I ever wanted to be a personal trainer until I discovered, what it meant to help other people fit on their mental health, because in passing over the last 6-7 years, I've always mentioned to people at the gym and, in steam rooms and saunas or in downtime or like in passing, what it's done for me, for my mental health. It's like, it's done so much. So to be able to help other people that way is awesome. And I can't wait to actually build a clientele list and have my own, my own business. That's going to be something that it's another achievement in the works. Yeah, it's meant a whole bunch in my little itty bitty heart.
Yeah, that's so great. We're so very happy for you, Lorenzo. I do want to take a step back here for a moment because there is something I want to kind of ask you about in that regard, with physical fitness. So you and I both know that it's a tremendous stress relief, right? You're having a bad day, you go in the gym, you're using, you can use your past traumas, right? Like if you want to like take anger, whatever it is, right? And you can fuel yourself, through that workout, good, bad, whatever it may be. We get that physical part of it, very easy to see and kind of understand how the gym is helpful. I'm wondering though too, Lorenzo, would you talk to how, being in the gym has helped you, kind of, I'm not even sure what the right words would be, but kind of like reconnect with your body and gain that appreciation back after the type of trauma that you've suffered?
Okay, so one of the things, of course, it's going to help you with physical stress. When you release your physical stress, you're releasing a lot of your mental stress.
Yeah.
When you focus on your anger, when you're like trying to lift that last set, and putting the two together and like, screaming at that voice in your head that's saying that you're just a little traumatized person, you can't do it, pushing past those reps and getting all of those in, it's just, I don't have words to describe how much it's helped me. And I don't know if I've said this, but the external part is a bonus.
Yeah.
For me, a big part of it also is anyone that's ever been involved in any kind of trauma, like, I never get comfortable saying it. Anyone that's ever been involved in a sexual trauma, the biggest thing you lack is a sense of control. And when you are able to hone in on that control of being able to control, like, okay, so if I put in some extra sets here, my chest is going to pop out a little bit more here. So like that sense of control is priceless.
Yeah.
And the feeling is indescribable. And you just can't really, you can't beat it. Like what it does to you, it brings out a more true confidence in myself. It's brought out a Lorenzo that I've never known.
That's so cool.
It's just, I don't know who I was supposed to be, and I'm not looking for him anymore.
Yeah.
Like that's the big part to get through is like, you got to stop looking for who you think you woulda, coulda, shoulda been.
Yeah.
And just take the L and, go for the W.
Thank you for speaking on that, Lorenzo. I have one last question for you today. Lorenzo, would you talk to us about what it means to you to be a Catch a Lift Fund veteran athlete?
It means absolutely everything to me right now. I'm also doing ambassador work for Catch a Lift right now.
You're a tremendous ambassador. Just want to kick that out there real fast. Tremendous.
Thank you. And I'm hoping that it opens doors. If not, I have all the gratitude. I have all the love and care that I can possibly muster up to say thank you, Catch a Lift. Thank you, Catch a Lift.
Oh my gosh, we're so very grateful for you, Lorenzo. And We are grateful for you to have you a part of our Catch a Lift family. Like I said, it's been such a true joy. When I say that, I really mean it, to watch you progress through the program, to see you say yes to opportunities, right? Heading off to FitOps, being, become certified as a personal trainer, coming back, saying yes to us, with the cycling certification. It's absolutely tremendous. And it's such a testament to you as a person, the work that you've put in all these years. So thank you for being with us here today. Thank you for being a role model, to our community. We're so very grateful for you, Lorenzo.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's it for this week's episode of the Coach's Corner. We will return next Wednesday at 1 Eastern Time with another episode. We thank you, Lorenzo, so very much for coming on today, sharing your story and your beautiful light with us all. It was absolutely tremendous. We couldn't be more grateful to you. A huge thank you to Lynn Coughlin, Henry Pomper, and Kaylee Nasiri for all of the work you all do week after week to make this podcast possible. And we thank the entire Catch a Lift team. Don't forget to join us every Wednesday live at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for a chance to win Cal Swag and to chat with your brothers and sisters. Until next week, keep it real and stay Cal strong.